show.
Welcome to episode 154 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. He's Lepore, I'm Bruno. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. The start of the NHL regular season is almost here, and today is one of our favorite episodes of the year. It's our season preview. We are going to run through all 32 teams in the NHL, and we are going to let you know if they're going to go over or under their regular season point total based on the point totals from Pinnacle Sportsbook. It's always one of our favorite episodes of the season. So I promise you want to stay tuned until the very end, because we are going to run through every team, every division. We're going to have takes flying off the wall, left, right, and center. It's going to be a lot of fun. So before we get into all that, it is time to officially welcome in my partner in crime, Mr. Michael Lepore. How you doing today, man?
Anthony Bruno, you said it. Maybe the funnest episode of the year. The over-under episode where we get to have hot takes. People throw shit at the monitor because they don't like our predictions of their favorite NHL team. I can't wait. But I will say, I think we should stamp it even before we start, that we should make a point at the end of the season to do like a full review of all the teams we picked and all the outcomes, and we'll explain the reasons they went over or under, or if we were right or wrong. I think that would be fun. Let's book it in now.
Yeah, no, we definitely have to do that at the end of the season. That's a really good point, because we don't actually have our results from last season. If you guys want to go see how we did, you can go check out that video, which we posted pretty much a year ago today. But yeah, let's just dive right into this, Lepore.
Okay.
We're obviously going to start with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Whoa.
So according to Pinnacle Sportsbook, very sharp odds over there, very sharp lines.
Know what they're doing.
The Leafs, their season point total is set at 101.5. So are you going over or under?
I will say slam dunk over. I really feel that way. I did not really like last year's Leafs team, and they finished with 102 points. I think Marner's going to have a big year. We replaced Brody and Klingberg with Ekman Larson and Tanev. And I think compared to last year, our goaltending can't be any worse. So I think it would be a really disappointing season for the Toronto Maple Leafs if they finished under 100 points. There might be some growing pains with regard to Nylander starting at center, if that remains to be true. But I don't know, man. I just look at the Matthews era and I look at the numbers this team puts up and the goals they score. If they can get average goaltending and stay healthy, I think that's money in the bank. 101.5 is an easy smash.
This is a slam dunk. This is the slam dunk of all slam dunks. The Leafs are absolutely going over 101.5 points. I couldn't agree with you more. Last year, it was a very up and down season. Like, despite the Leafs finishing with 102 points, despite Matthews having one of the greatest goal scoring seasons really of all time, despite Nylander having a career season, despite, there was a lot of good performances across the board. And despite all of that, it still wasn't that great of a season overall. Like, there was a lot of dips. Domi got off to a brutal start. Bertuzzi got off to a brutal start.
Terrible.
And they still finished with 102 points. So I think if they can maintain a little bit more consistency, as you said, if they can get goaltending, the decor looks like it's one of the best decors this team has had in a long time. I think this team easily goes over 101.5. And I'll go a step further. I think they're going to win the Atlantic Division this season.
Hey, you mentioned earlier going back and watching previous episodes. I think we're going to have to go back and watch our last 5 season previews to see how many times that was your prediction. But we've been hoping. It's kind of funny, right? You look back at this Leafs era and we always, we're good in the regular season. We think back to our great regular seasons. They've never won the division. I mean, they won the Canadian division in the regular season, but it's kind of strange that, like, we've never even really fought for it, to be fair. So, you know what? Yeah, like I'm with you. Like, I think they're the favorite to win the division with Tampa being 1 year older, and the Bruins still in negotiations with Swayman. So yeah, I'm with you, Bruno. Leafs win the division.
No, Lepore, you said it. Ever since we started this podcast, I've picked the Leafs to win the division every year. And the only year they actually did was when they won the North Division. That's what it was called, right? The Canadian
North.
Division during the COVID season. I don't know. Some people probably say it doesn't even count. The Leafs, I think, are finally going to win the Atlantic this year. This division is always absolutely loaded. I think it's loaded again, to be honest with you, but I think the Leafs have the best team in the division. And I think it's going to come together this year. Now, whether they actually make a run in the playoffs, who the hell knows? But as we all know, this is a great regular season team. Do not bet against this team in the regular season. Absolute juggernaut from game 1 to 82.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it plays out. All right. Next up. So this team actually has a higher projected point total than the Leafs. It's the Florida Panthers at 102.5 points.
Okay.
Obviously, they just won the Stanley Cup. They won the division last season. They had an incredible year. But what's your take on this Panthers team heading into this season?
It's always hard when you have a team that's coming back with the belt to make a prediction on the season that follows, because you wonder how much care and effort is going to go into that regular season. And I don't blame them for that. I mean, you went to the show and you won it. So now you kind of go into the regular season and it's kind of a letdown. But at that number, I still think they get it. Like, I still think they finish in at least in the low 100s. They're still a great team. They still have goaltending. They're still unbelievably coached. So again, it's similar to the Leafs, like them not cracking 100 would be pretty surprising and disappointing. So I will also go over on the Florida Panthers. I don't think by much. I mean, when you're at that point total, even like, 105 isn't that much more, 107. But yeah, I'll go over as well on the Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you on the Panthers. Like, I don't think they're going to go, I don't think they're going to hit this. I don't think it's a slam dunk, but I mean, all they need is 103 points to hit the over here.
Mhm.
I don't think there's any reason that this team is going to drop off significantly. I think heading into last season, their point total was set at like, I want to say it was like 91 or 92 and a half. And
Mhm.
obviously they completely overshot that. I could be wrong. But I know it definitely wasn't 102 and a half as it is set heading into this year.
Well, when they made the playoffs as the 8 seed, they only had like 91 or 92 points. So that lines up.
Exactly. And I
Yeah.
know they lost a couple guys on the blue line. Obviously, OEL is now a Leaf. Brandon Montour is out the door. But this is still a deep roster from top to bottom. They still have good goaltending. So yeah, Panthers over 102 and a half. Next up, this team has essentially the same point total as they did last season. At last season, Lepore, we were stunned by this. And then they obviously went over, but it's the Boston Bruins.
Boston Bruins.
99 and a half points. Now, heading into last season, we were like, holy shit, they lost Bergeron and Krejci. How is their point total set? I think last year was set at like 100 and a half points. But anyway, how do you feel about the Bruins heading into this year? 99 and a half.
It's a tough call because, as I mentioned, the Swayman thing, like the Bruins without Swayman is tough to call. I say this every year, Bruno, that I don't want to bet against the Boston Bruins because they just keep repeatedly proving me wrong. Like what I say about the Bruins is, would you just go away? Go away, please, Boston, one day. 99 and a half. You know what? Let's have some fun. I'll go under. I say they finish with like 98 or 99 points.
Oh, okay. I love it. This is the first time we're going to disagree.
And
I think the Bruins are going over this as well. And listen, I know it's boring to say this, but I still think the three best teams in the Atlantic Division are the Leafs, the Panthers, and the Bruins. I know it's boring and it's the same thing every year. And listen, I know Tampa's lingering as well. But the Bruins got Elias Lindholm. They beefed up the blue line. Jeremy Swayman, I think, is the X factor here. Obviously, like, I mean, they better get him signed. I mean, holy shit.
they fucked that up, eh?
Well, it's a disaster. I mean,
Oh,
obviously now with
man.
Olmark out the door, like if they don't get this shit figured out, they're obviously in trouble. But I mean, I think they're gonna get it sorted out. Who knows? Maybe by the time we post this podcast, he's gonna sign a long-term extension. But yeah, again, he's never played, like he's never had a massive workload as the true number one. Is he capable of it? I think so. Like we obviously saw the Bruins ride him in the playoffs last year. But yeah, I think this team, if everyone's fully healthy, I don't want to bet against them. As you said, they never go away. They're just like a cockroach every year. It doesn't matter like who's on the roster. Like me and you can be their top two centermen, and they somehow still find a way to get like 100 points. So I'm going over on the Bruins as well.
Sure.
Obviously, I think the team that's coming up next year. I mentioned them. It's the Tampa Bay Lightning, 97.5 points, over or under.
I will go under on 97.5. And I say all the time on this show that I fucking love the Tampa Bay Lightning. I love their swag. I love the players they have. I love their cast of characters. I love their coach. But similar to the Florida thing, I just think Tampa doesn't give a shit about the regular season, and they don't care about home ice advantage or whether they finish in the 2-3 or in a wild card. So I'll go under on that because I would have them in probably this. I'd have them in the 7 wild card as if I made the standings right now. So I would say they finish with like 94 or something along those lines.
Yeah, so last year the Lightning finished with 98 points. But listen, I agree with you again. I also think they're going under 97.5. And the simple answer, I don't think their roster is that good. Like,
Ooh.
it's top heavy. Obviously, they have star players. I'm not
Bruno.
an idiot. I know how good Nikita Kucherov and Braden Point are, and Jake Gensel. I mean, those guys should probably feast. But I mean, you just look at their depth chart. It's not great, especially considering they lost Sergachev. I know they brought McDonough back. They got JJ Moser, who's an underrated defenseman, but I mean, just not a whole lot jumping off the page to me here. Like, again, I think they're probably going to make the playoffs, but I think they're going to finish between like, I don't know, 93 and like 96 points. So I'm under on the Lightning as well.
Nice.
All right, this might be my favorite part of the entire show because
Oh,
the next
fuck.
team on the list, Lepore, is your Ottawa Senators, 91.5 points. Is this the year that they finally take a leap, that they finally make the playoffs?
It's funny, Bruno, because I was recently drafted by a beer league hockey team, and I don't mean drafted in the literal sense. I was dragged to be on the team, and a lot of hockey fans on the team naturally, and a lot of Sens fans, and I've been egging them to listen to our show. And I told them about this episode, the predictions of the over-under. So I find it pretty hilarious that they put the Sens at 91.5, considering over the last 2 years, the 8th seed in the East point total was 91 and 92. So they're literally putting it on the line of, are they or are they not going to make the playoffs? Okay. Now, I really like what the Sens did in the offseason. They had too many holes in their lineup, guys who were terrible away from the puck. I think they buttoned that up. I think Perron was a good signing. At the end of the day, Allmark should make them better. Full stop. He should make them better. Even if this team is still a disaster defensively as far as their forwards go, he should make more saves than the guys before him. But when I look what they did, and I look at, okay, 1 year older of Kachuk, Stützle, Batherson, Shabbat, those guys, is it enough to put them that many points ahead? Like, I think last year, what was it? They finished with 74 points. So really, is it
78?
78?
But it was a massive
so
disappointment, obviously, because they were expected to be a bubble team and they were awful last season.
Okay, so is what they added worth 14 points? Like that's the discussion. And I will say that it's not. I say Ottawa finishes, the number that jumps out to me is like 88. They'll finish with 88 points. I think they finally get over 500. I think some consistency is built. I just don't think there's enough room in the conference for them right now. I just paid them a lot of compliments. I think they got better, and I think at least their fans will finally have some excitement, still have a team to watch fighting for a playoff spot. And we always say when we do these predictions, really, you're nickel and diming. It's like, okay, 88 or 92 points over 82 games. What is that? Like, that's why these are the most fun teams to do.
This team has missed the playoffs 7 years in a row. And if you actually line up all of these point totals from top to bottom, you go throughout the entire league, they are right on the bubble. They have the 17th highest point total in the NHL heading into the season. I won't spoil who that team like right on the bubble is as like the last playoff team. But listen, I don't think the Senators did enough in the offseason. I think this honestly really comes down to their goaltending. Like, is Allmark able to play to the same level as he did in Boston? Obviously, he played behind an incredible defensive team, and now he's going to a team that can't play defense to save their lives. Now, is Allmark going to change that? Possibly. I mean, if your goaltender has a great season, he can cover up a lot of warts. I just don't think this team quite has enough. I can't rely on Josh Norris to stay healthy. Mm-hmm. That shoulder scares the crap out of me. Chikrin's not here anymore. And maybe you could say like, maybe their D is actually going to be better because now like Sanderson is going to take another leap and he's going to be their go-to guy. And, I don't disagree with that. I think Jake Sanderson's a good player. I just don't think this team has quite enough to make the playoffs because, again, I still think those other teams in the Atlantic are just a class above. So I'm going to say they go under 91.5, and I'm going to say they miss the playoffs for an 8th year in a row.
Shocker. Absolute shocker.
Yeah, biggest shocker of the entire episode.
Yeah.
Next up is the Red Wings, right under the Senators, 90.5. So again, they're like one of those other bubble teams. Will they make it this year finally?
I think they do. I think
okay.
I'm going to go over on the Detroit Red Wings. I'm bullish on the Red Wings. I can't believe those 2 signings they just did. For those numbers, I mean, does Mo Cedar have like the worst agent on the planet? I think it's Claude Lemieux, actually, now that I think about it.
Oh, there you go.
But, man, that's good momentum, though, going into the season, getting those guys locked up. They came close last year. People forget they finished, I think it was 1 point out of the playoffs. Teams 1 year older, 1 year more experienced. Let's do it. I'm going to say over on the Detroit Red Wings, and I think I might put them in the 8th spot and have them in the playoffs.
Wow, okay. Well, I disagree with you again here because,
Nice.
I think the Red Wings are kind of the same team that they were last season. Last year, they finished with 91 points. So, again, they were kind of right on the bubble. They almost made the playoffs. I don't know. I don't love there's another team in this division, and you probably know who I'm thinking of as I go through my thought process here that I think is actually better than this team that we're going to talk about next. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I think the Red Wings are going to go under. I don't love their goaltending situation right now with Cam Talbot and Alex Lyon. Listen, they got some really nice young players. I just don't think they're quite good enough to make the playoffs. I think they're going to be in the same boat as the Senators. I'm going to go under 90.5 on the Wings.
Okay.
And that leads us into the next team, Lepore, who I'll just start off with this. I think the Buffalo Sabres are good, man.
Oh.
And I know last year they had a disappointing season, and it was mostly because Tage Thompson went from 47 goals to like a 25 goal scorer again, and Alex Tuck had a bad year. But when I just look at the talent on the Sabres roster, like if those guys can have bounce back seasons, man, they got a lot of depth. Dylan Cousins, Jack Quinn, Zach Benson. Like their decor is nasty. Like if some of these younger guys can just take another leap, like Owen Power and Bowen Byram and Dahlin's a stud. Like this is a good team, man. I think this is a team that could actually make the playoffs. I have more confidence in them getting into the playoffs than the Senators and the Red Wings. So I'm going to go over on the Buffalo Sabres, whose point total is set at 89.5.
89. That's tough. That's tough. Because I'm with you, Bruno. Like you look at their depth and they have a lot of guys who can put the puck in. You mentioned Thompson, they got Cousins, Tuck, it keeps going. Even like I like Jordan Greenway on the third line is not a
Good
bad
player.
option. Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin are both first overall picks, so there's talent there. It's similar to I see Buffalo. I see Buffalo kind of similar or opposite to how I see the Bruins in the way that I'm not gonna believe it until they show me. Kind of like I think how you are with the Ottawa Senators. Like you're never gonna like they could get McDavid and Crosby and McKinnon in the offseason.
Hold on,
like,
if they
wow,
call McDavid,
show
they're
me.
making the playoffs. Let's
Yeah.
not get it twisted.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm gonna go under on Buffalo.
Okay.
I think they'll have a better season. I think they get in and around that total, but they got to show me. And I always say when we do the preseason predictions about the Buffalo Sabres, I root for the Sabres, maybe the nicest jerseys in the league, top to bottom. And I'd love to see them in the playoffs. I'd love to see that building in the playoffs. Their fans deserve it. So prove me wrong, Buffalo. Let's have some fun.
And then closing things out in the Atlantic is the Montreal Canadiens, who are still expected to be one of the worst teams in the league this year. Their point total set at 77.5. I'll just take this one first. I think the Habs are going to be better than they were last season. And just checking where so last year, actually, Lepore, this is tough. So last year they finished with 76 points. I kind of think they're in the same boat, man. Like if Buffalo has a bounce back year, if Detroit kind of stays where we think they're going to stay, if the Senators have a bounce back year, like the Habs, I like when you do the math, I don't think they're going to finish with that many points. So I'm going to go under 77.5.
Yeah. I like what Montreal is doing. But I will also go under. I just think there's too much guessing and hope with Montreal if you're going to pick them to do way better than they did last season. And you said the difference between the prediction and what they did last year is only a point or two, but I think it's more likely than not that there's a drop off or things finish about the same. They still have a lot of development to do with their D. I mean, there's questions in net as well. Like, I mean, how are those games going to get distributed? Of course, up top with Suzuki, Caulfield, and Slav, they're going to score a lot of goals, but it's about where I would put them. Like I'd put the Habs just under 500. But I'll go under. I'll stick to my under prediction. I'm kind of flip-flopping on this one because it's Montreal, man, and they're fucking annoying. So I won't be surprised if they're way better than we think they are, but maybe I'm chickening out here, but I'll go under.
So I think it's safe to say we both think the Atlantic Division is going to finish like it's finished pretty much the last
amazing
3, 4, 5 years. So we'll see how it plays out. I don't think there's going to be too many surprises in this division. It's time for a quick break for a word about Manscaped. Fellas, do you want your grooming routine to be a one and done deal? Well, the days of using the same trimmer for your face and your private parts are over, thanks to our friends at Manscaped. They've come up with the ultimate package to keep your hairs trim from 12 to 6. Introducing the Beard and Balls Bundle, featuring the Lawnmower 5.0 and the Beard Hedger, a trimmer for the moneymaker, and another for the boys downstairs. So get 20% off and free shipping using our exclusive code GFP20 at manscaped.com. Lepore, Manscaped coming through in the clutch once again.
Bruno, I can't say I've ever used the same trimmer on my face that I use on my balls, but apparently there are people out there who do, because Manscaped saw the need to do it. So if you are one of those people, don't waste any time. Go get the bundle. Keep that face clean. Keep your balls clean. Manscaped.com, promo code GFP20 for 20% and free shipping.
Gentlemen, don't be a damn farm animal. I mean, for the love of God, if you're using the same razor on your balls as you are on your face, I mean, come on. You're better than that. So head to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping using our exclusive code GFP20. That is code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. It's time for an important message from BetterHelp, a sponsor of today's episode. Sometimes in life, we go through difficult times, whether that's personally, whether that's in a relationship. And your mental health cannot be ignored. And a lot of times you can't tackle these situations by yourself. You need help. And that's where BetterHelp comes in. They make therapy easier and much less intimidating for a lot of people. BetterHelp lets you have therapy sessions as a phone call, video chat, or even messaging, whatever is most comfortable for you. BetterHelp will connect you with one of 30,000 therapists in their network. And in most cases, you'll be connected with a therapist within 48 hours. So go to betterhelp.com/GFP for 10% off your first month of therapy. Lepore, this service is incredible.
It is incredible. Anthony Bruno, mental health is something that's very serious. And be aware, if you're going through a dark time, you do not have to try to beat this thing alone. There are services out there that can provide you with some great help. BetterHelp is number one when it comes to that. As Bruno mentioned, there are different ways you can get in touch with people, different ways you can contact people. It's all up to you. Go to betterhelp.com/GFP.
Join 4 million people who have used BetterHelp to live healthier and happier lives. So go to betterhelp.com/GFP for 10% off your first month of therapy to connect with a therapist and see if BetterHelp is right for you. How about the Metro, though? Because last year, the Devils had a terrible season. Like heading into the year, not just myself, but there was other people being like, holy shit, this team might win the President's Trophy. They're loaded. And they just fell flat on their face. But this year, their point total is the highest in the division, set at 101.5. So where are you on the Devils?
I'm going over on the Devils. I mean, if I'm being as straightforward as possible, it's because they got Jesper Bratt, the best name in the league. But beyond his name, he's a great player. Offensive depth, they can score. I love Dougie Hamilton. I love Pesci. They got a new coach. It should be exciting. I think they're going to be motivated to do much better than they did last year. And let's face it, they should have a goalie. Like last year, the big thing was that New Jersey does not have a goalie. And with Markstrom, they have a goalie. So I am going to go over on the Devils. But the Devils are a weird one for me because they could finish with in around 100 points, and I wouldn't be surprised. Or they could finish with like 112. And I wouldn't be surprised if they just kind of get excited and ride that momentum. But I'll give it a pretty confident over on the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything else I can say that you already said. I feel the exact same way about New Jersey. Obviously, I think the two biggest factors are Dougie Hamilton is healthy and they have Markstrom. And I know Luke Hughes is injured right now, but getting Dougie Hamilton back is massive. And, last year they basically had the worst goaltending in the sport. If Markstrom can provide like league average goaltending, this team is loaded. I think Sheldon Keefe is going to have a hell of a season with this team. I'm going over as well, 101.5.
Jack Adams for Sheldon Keefe.
It's in play, man. If you bring this team from 81 points and they're like a borderline, President's Trophy team, I mean, he could easily win the Jack Adams.
Not bad.
Let's go, Sheldon. Might have to put a bet in on that as well, Lepore.
Mm.
Next up, this team's a little tricky. Like the Carolina Hurricanes. 100.5. Like, I think it's safe to say, Lepore, that they're going to take a little bit of a step back. But this kind of reminds me of the Boston situation from last year, where we were like, oh, they lost all these players. They can't possibly be good again. But man, it's the Carolina Hurricanes, Rod the Bod. Like this, they're a well-oiled machine. So what are your thoughts? 100.5 points.
Again, that's about where I'd put them. But based on what you said, I think, and how you lined it up, I think you're going to go a certain direction. So I kind of want to go the other direction. Carol, it's tough to bet against certain cultures. And when you have Rod Brind'Amour as your coach, that's a culture on its own. So when you have a team that's been this consistent for as long as they've been consistent with that coach, it's tough to bet against them, but I will go under on Carolina, just barely. Like I say, they finish like 96 to 98 points. That's my call with the Carolina Hurricanes.
Like if you're looking at it logically, like considering the guys they lost on the blue line, a little bit of offense that they lost, you could easily make an argument, as you just did, that they're going to go under, but there's just something about this team. They're always well coached. They always play well defensively. Now listen, Freddie Anderson, I mean, this guy can't stay healthy at all, but Kachetkov is a great backup. I mean, this team's going to be good again. Again, I don't want to get fooled like I did last year with the Bruins. I'm going to go over 100.5 points for the Carolina Hurricanes.
Hard on your sleeve, Bruno. I knew it.
Yeah. These Canes, baby, they're going to be good. How about the Rangers? I don't know. This is always a weird team because, I mean, based on how they finished last season, winning the President's Trophy, you would think that their point total would be higher than it is, but they're only at 99.5.
Well, I don't know what it is about the New York Rangers. They get no respect. And people might be screaming at the screen right now as to why they get no respect. But they're a good regular season team, and they have talent, and they have goaltending, and they have depth. And Fox, they have one of the best defensemen in the league. I just look at the totality of their lineup, and I can't see them going under on that. Now, if it's going to translate into the playoffs and they're going to go on some sort of run, that's a whole other conversation. But the Rangers are the Rangers to me. Like they're a well-balanced team. They have talent. They have a goalie. Let's do it. Like, why wouldn't they go over? So I'll go over on the New York Rangers.
Yeah, I think the only reason their point total is 99.5 is because if you look at the underlying numbers from last year, at 5-on-5, they only had a +1 goal differential. So they were just feasting on the power play. But at 5-on-5, they weren't very good. But listen, there's no reason to believe that this team's power play is going to drop off. As you said, they essentially have star players at every position. Like when you look at their roster, I mean, it's still a loaded roster. I don't see why this team can't finish with over 100 points again. It's been 3 straight years with over 100 points. Last year, they won the President's Trophy. I think they finish with over 99.5 as well. All right. We're getting to the sort of mediocre teams now in the division. The Washington Capitals, 90.5.
I know where you're going to go with the Washington Capitals because last year they did sneak in the playoffs and it was like that ultimate mystery. What were they? Like a -34?
Oh, yeah. Their goal differential was a joke. It was -37.
-37. Wow. And it's 90.5?
Yeah.
Oh,
they finished with 91 points last year.
Yeah, somehow. But that's tough. And they did get better. They made some on paper. They made some additions and they did get better. I got to go under. If I'm being logical, I got to go under. Like, I still think, like, I don't think they're going to be bad. But you know what? No, I wouldn't be surprised if the Capitals are going bad. And like I often say, whenever we do these shows, like, what is more likely? Like, okay, they're at, you said 90.5. What's more likely, them finishing with 80 points or 100 points? 80 points. If the Caps are going to go around 500, so I'm going to go under on the Caps. I have to.
I think you're going to be stunned with my take on this team. I actually really like their offseason additions.
Hey.
Like Pierre-Luc Dubois was garbage last year, but he just has like a terrible attitude. He really does.
Fucking right, Bruno.
But if he can figure it out and be the Pierre-Luc Dubois that we saw in Winnipeg when he was actually like a good player and not last year when he was garbage on the Kings. You know, Tom Wilson fully healthy this year. On the blue line, they got Chychrun now, Matt Roy from the Kings. Like, so, Andrew Mangiapane, our Paisan. Like, this is, I don't know, man. It's a pretty solid roster. Like, I don't know if they're going to, I think they're going to be on the playoff bubble. I'm going to go slightly over 90.5. Like, I think they finish with like 92, 93 points.
And do they get into the playoffs?
It's a great question. They're going to be a bubble. Honestly, the last playoff spot is probably going to go to them or Buffalo. I'll say Buffalo gets the last playoff spot.
And they don't get it. Okay, so there's a book, Bruno. It's one of my favorite sports books. It's called Legacy. And what it's about, how top to bottom, how the New Zealand All Blacks run things. And there's a chapter in the book that's called No Assholes. No assholes. Because no assholes are allowed on that team. It's about positive energy, positive reinforcement. Everyone takes turns cleaning, serving, all that stuff, getting the balls, whatever it takes. They're a unit, they're a family. No assholes allowed. And the Washington Capitals went out and got the biggest asshole in the National Hockey League. And I got bad vibes about it, man. That's part of the reason why I'm going under.
That's totally fair. Yeah, I mean, I can't really disagree with you when it comes to PLD. One other thing I'll say is Ovechkin got off to a really slow start last year.
Really bad.
If he can be a little bit more consistent, maybe that changes things as well for this team. But I'm a little bit more bullish on the Capitals. I know everyone probably thought I was going to go under because I was like trashing that team all of last season. You know who I think is actually not a good hockey team, Lepore? Even though I know you love this guy. I love him too. Listen, we both love Sid the Kid. I'm just going to take this one first. The Penguins, 89.5 points. I look at their roster. They just kind of suck, man. They're kind of stuck in limbo. And I know Sid just took like a massive discount on his latest contract, 8.7 million. But I just don't think they're that good. Like, I think they're going to miss the playoffs again. And I think they're going to go under 89.5 points.
Yeah. See, I'm not gonna, I don't know if I want to call this a take. Like, I have sort of like a separate theory about why Sid signed the deal he signed. Everyone talks about his loyalty to the Penguins and he wants to win and, how much money he left on the table to do so. But could you not say, and I'm not saying I'm necessarily saying this, but could you not say he took that deal because it's a fair deal? And most importantly, it wouldn't be the most difficult deal to move.
Oh, wow. I like that take.
So
Can we see a mid-season trade to the Colorado Avalanche?
Mid-season, or even if it's the off-season after this season, because he did sign a 2-year deal. I'm with you, Bruno. Like, you look at the lineup, it's every player on the team is either old or bad, right? So like that number of, he said 89.5. Like that one, I could see that one being like, if we did like a measure of the biggest drop, I might guess the Penguins.
Yeah, like they might be garbage.
Exactly. They might be a bottom 5 team, bottom 7 team. Like, I wouldn't be surprised. And I hate saying that. I hate betting against Sid. And I know he'll have a great season and he'll carry the team. And maybe the same thing will happen. They'll be trash and he'll just put the team on his back and they'll go on a run and almost make the playoffs like they did last year. But when I see that number, I can't. I can't go. I could never go over based on that lineup. And I think this one might be the one that's the most different from its prediction.
Yeah, I think there's a big range of outcomes for this team. Like, this team might be terrible. I love that take. Like, let's say Crosby does get dealt at the deadline and this team just says, screw it, we're bottoming out. All of a sudden they're selling everyone. Like, they could be awful. Now, I don't think they're going to be maybe rock bottom, but yeah, I'm definitely going under 89.5. The next team is a team that like no one ever believes in. They have the exact same point total. It's the New York Islanders, 89.5. Last year, they finished with 94 points. No one believes in them every year, and then they just end up winning a bunch of hockey games. So where are you on the Islanders?
So with the Islanders, okay, I kind of got like a beef with the Islanders just because of that team. To me, that's just like so boring. And there's some talent on the team, but there's no flash. There's no, like, people talk about Barzal. Like, I'm not going to say Barzal's overrated, but I want more from him. You know what I mean? Especially in a market like New York. But I don't see it with the Islanders. You look at their lineup, it's still the same. It's like the same type of player. It's guys, Pajot, and they picked up Engvall, and I love Anders Lee because he captained Notre Dame, and everyone knows I'm a big Notre Dame fan. But even with him now, like, those legs have a lot of miles on them, and he plays a tough game. How much can he contribute? Brock Nelson, Kyle Palmieri. I mean, really, like, is that legit top 6 talent? And they picked up Anthony Duclair, who I've always thought is an underrated player. He's one of the fastest players in the league. When he was in Ottawa, I loved watching because he was so fast. And I think he'll have a good year. But no, I got to go under on the New York Islanders simply because of like just my overall feeling for them as an organization. And fuck it, I'm not going to bet on Lou. No way. After that Marlowe deal, no chance.
You know what? For me, it's more of like a math equation where it's like there's only so many points that can go around. So if the Devils are going to take a big leap, if I think that the Capitals are going to take a leap, then I don't know. The Islanders, how many points could they possibly rack up this season? I think they're a solid team, but I'm going to go under as well. I'm going to go under 89.5. I think they finish with like 86, 87, 88 points somewhere in that
because they
range.
always do. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they're going to miss the playoffs, but still like a decent team. Next up is the Flyers. So this is another team that, I don't know, last year they overachieved big time. I think they were a huge surprise. You know, I don't know how much upside this team actually has. Like, I don't think they have that much upside. Like, they have some nice players. Like, when you look at their roster, they actually have some decent young players. But again, this is another team that I think cannot compete for a playoff spot in this division and in this conference. Their point total is set at 85.5. I'm going to say they go under as well.
You think like way under, or it's
I think they go slightly under. Like, I don't think this team is garbage because they definitely surprised the hell out of me last season. But man, like when I look at their roster, like Sean Couturier is still their number one center. He was so bad last year. And I know he was coming off like all his injuries and a long layoff, but it's like, I'm looking at this team outside of like Travis Konechny. I know they got Matvey Michkov now and Owen Tippett. Like, they got some nice young players, but
Michkov will be fun.
But like, man, this is not a playoff team. So I'm going under 85.5.
Yeah, they had a weird season last year because the way it turned out for them was obviously out of the playoffs, but they were in a playoff spot for a lot of the season. People forget that. But there is something in me. It's like a brain versus heart thing with the Flyers when I look at this team, because Tortorella is going to have them locked in. Love him or hate him, he's going to have a system in place, and this team is going to be locked in, and they are going to play the way they need to play to get points in the standings. But kind of like how you said about it being a math equation, and I'd like to see the Flyers do well. I can't see them finishing ahead of some of the other teams, and some of those other teams I have also missing the playoffs. So I'll go under. I'll put them, I would guess them in the low 80s.
Okay. So the last team in this division is the Blue Jackets, obviously dealing with a horrible tragedy this offseason with the death of Johnny Gaudreau, which was shocking and awful. And, you know, they're obviously not expected to be good this season, but listen, I think they have some nice young players as well. It feels like I'm saying this about every team, but like Adam Fantilli, if this guy takes a leap, I mean, listen, they're not going to make the playoffs. They're going to be a bad team, but their point total set at 65.5. I actually think they can slightly eclipse this. Like, I'm going to say over 65.5 on the Blue Jackets. Like, I think they could finish with like 67 points.
Yeah. I will also go over on the Columbus Blue Jackets. I believe in success when teams are playing with a purpose and a reason, and they'll have a lot of motivation to have a good season and a lot to play for. And there'll be a lot of pump ups in that locker room. You're going to hear "do it for Johnny" a lot in that room. And you look back at hockey, man, hockey's an emotional sport. It carries. Like we saw it here in Ottawa, Craig Anderson, when his wife had breast cancer, the team went on a run. The fans got behind it. You saw it in Vegas after there was the shooting at the concert. I mean, they went on a run. I think this team is going to play with a lot of purpose, and they're going to play with a lot of pride, and I'll put them over, and I'm pretty confident about that one.
Love it. Over on the Blue Jackets at 65.5. They actually have the second lowest projected point total in the entire league. So yeah, we're both a little bit higher than the market on the Blue Jackets. All right. Over to the Western Conference. We're going to start in the Central Division. So the team at the top, actually it's a tie, but I'll start with the Colorado Avalanche, 103.5. So for context, they have the second highest over under in the entire NHL. We'll get to the team that has the highest a little later in the show. But Colorado, where are you standing on them? Over under 103.5.
Gotta go over, man. I think I have to go over on Colorado because at the end of the day, the teams typically that finish at the top of the conference have more than that. And I find it strange how in these over-under predictions, and of course they look at underlying numbers, but why is there never like a 109.5 or like even like a 113, they think a team's going to blow everyone out of the water. They never do that. And I don't know. I think it's because maybe they see it as too risky if there's injuries. And then really, if you put a team, like how I say, what's more likely over under 10, 15 points? Well, if you put a team at like 115 points, it's can only be worse. But they're still loaded. You could still call them the favorite to win the Stanley Cup in my eyes. I think that's an easy one. I think it's tough to bet against Colorado hitting that point total.
Yeah, this is an absolute slam dunk for me. It would take a devastating injury to Nathan McKinnon or Cale Makar. Like, even if, okay, if Mikko Rantanen gets injured, that's a big deal as well. But let's say Rantanen missed like 25 games, but you gave me 82 games of McKinnon and Makar. I think this team still goes over 103.5. So yeah, to me, this is also a slam dunk. Next up, Lepore is the Dallas Stars, who actually have the exact same point total, 103.5. What's your take on the Stars?
I will have the same rant about the Stars, essentially that I had on Colorado. I think they're one of the best teams in the league. I think they're a contender for the Stanley Cup. So it's hard for me to say they're going to go under that point total. I think they eclipse it. And as I said about Jesper Bratt, maybe having the best name in the league, Rupe Hintz is pretty close.
Strong.
So strong. Tough to bet against that. And I am a huge fan of Thomas Harley. I watched a lot of him in the playoffs. I thought he was 10 out of 10. Unbelievable player. And they got him locked up for a reasonable amount. It seems like every fucking team pulls that off except for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But I see that number and I see the depth that Dallas has. I see them as a team that could win the Stanley Cup. So I will go over on the Dallas Stars.
Yeah, I think this is easy as well. This team has depth. They have stars at every position. Again, it would take like a devastating injury to like Miro Heiskanen, Jason Robertson. Like, I mean, Jason Robertson, he's actually dealing with a cyst on his foot that he got surgically removed in the offseason. So who knows how he's going to look to start the season. But yeah, I mean, at 103.5 on this Stars team, one of the best teams in the league, I'm going over as well. Next up is a team that I think the market, I don't think the market definitely thinks that they're going to take a leap this season, and that's the Nashville Predators. With all the splashes they made in the offseason, their point total set at 101.5. Over or under on the Preds?
It's gonna be a good division, man. You look at what Nashville had the best offseason in the league.
Hard to disagree.
What's that?
It's hard to disagree with that.
Oh, I thought you said I disagree. I got excited for a second there. I felt it move. But yeah, Nashville seems like everybody wants to play there. It seems like everyone who plays there has a great time. They say if you ask players around the league and former players who have played in Nashville, where was their favorite place to play? And they will say Nashville. Trotz has built a culture there, and I see them getting that total pretty easily. But Nashville is kind of a weird one because there's so many changes. I always say to be a little cautious when there's drastic changes to a team. And there's some big names that came in, but I look at that number and that team's got to finish with over 100 points. So I have to go over on Nashville as well.
Yeah, so last year I was so out on this Predators team. I'm like, this team sucks. They're going under their point total, and they were actually pretty good. They surprised the hell out of me. And now they loaded up in the offseason. Jonathan Marchessault, Steven Stamkos. They brought in Brady Shea on the blue line. I mean, this is a good team, man. I'm going to say they also go over this, but I think it's like a slight over. Like, I think they finish with like 103 points. I think the Stars and the Avalanche are the class of the division. I think they probably finish third. And one of the reasons I think they go over is because I think there's going to be some regression from some of the other teams in this division. And that leads us into our next team. They're a Canadian team, the Winnipeg Jets, who were unbelievable last season. They finished with 110 points, but their point total heading into this year set at 94.5.
I'm going over on Winnipeg.
Oh, wow. So you still love the Jets, eh? You haven't changed your mind.
Yeah, I think it's a really good division, man. Love Hellebuck, love Kyle Connor, love Josh Morrissey. Tomb many game-breaking players to finish with that point total. I think they have a similar year to last season. Why not over on the Jets as well?
So I think the Jets are definitely going to take a step back. I know that they were incredible defensively last year. I just question whether they can replicate that, especially because like offensively, they're just not that good. I know Hellebuck is all world, but I just question whether they can have the same year defensively as they had. And listen, I know they finished with 110 points last year, but I just think this team's going to regress maybe more than people think. I'm going to go under 94 and a half on the Winnipeg Jets. Sorry,
Okay. So you have them
Winnipeg.
missing the playoffs.
Listen, I think they're going to be a bubble team. Like they could finish with 94 points and this still hits 93 points. I think they're going to be right on the playoff bubble.
Okay.
How about the Wild? They're basically neck and neck with the Jets here. 93 and a half points for the Minnesota Wild.
See, I look at that, okay? Like I look at the Minnesota Wild, and it's tough for me to put them at the same point as the Jets in terms of where I think they're going to finish in the standings. Like you look at their lineup, and it's like, okay, they got like everyone's saying, oh, they got Kaprizov, like they have star power. But really, like after that, like you look at their forward lineup, like Hartman, like I love Zuccarello, but he's old now. Boldy, Eriksson Ek, Marcus Johansson, like where are the goals going to come from? And then they look at their D and like it's okay, but it's not groundbreaking. I just don't believe in this Minnesota team, so I'm going to go under on the Wild.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty good take. Listen, like the Wild have star players like Kaprizov. I mean, really, I shouldn't say they have like they have one star player. They have a bunch of good players, but really only one star player. Who the hell knows what their goaltending is going to look like? They have an absolute stud, that Jesper Wallstedt guy,
Mm.
who's like waiting in the wings and could get more playing time this year. But I mean, they still got Gustafson, Marc-Andre Fleury, your favorite goaltender. So yeah, I agree, man. Like I don't think this team is that good. I'm going under 93 and a half as well. I think here's where it gets a little interesting is with the Utah Hockey Club.
Back.
What are your thoughts on Utah, man? Like I think they're low key like a pretty decent team.
Yeah.
They're and I should
balanced.
say they're over under set at 87 and a half.
They're a balanced lineup. I think kind of similar to Minnesota. There's not a whole lot of star power there. Sergachev was a good pickup. Sean Dursey is sick. If you're watching, you can see me crying.
God, I wish he was still a Leaf.
Yeah, Clayton Keller is fucking unbelievable and very, very underrated in my eyes. But overall, I don't really believe in the lineup. So yeah, that's a tough number though. That's a tough number. I've gone over so many times. I might be way wrong with this one, but I'm going to go under on Utah.
Fuck it, man. It's the year of the Utah Hockey Club. I'm going over 87 and a half points. They have some guys on this team that could take a major leap. Dylan
Good.
Gunther, Logan Cooley, both in year two. Like, man, if these guys could take a leap, and Dylan Gunther, he might not even be considered, like he still actually might even be considered a rookie just based on like games played. But listen, it's not like they have an outstanding roster, but they got a nice mix of like quality players. They brought in Sergachev, as you said. I think Connor Ingram and Ned is pretty solid. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs, but I think this team finishes with like 90 points. So I'm going over.
90 points for Utah.
Yeah.
Poor Arizona, man. Those fans. The team leaves and they're going to have some success. Awesome.
All right. And next up, I mean, this team, I don't know. I think this team is just like, they're just very meh. To me, like, I don't know what other word to use to describe them. The St. Louis Blues, 85 and a half points.
Yeah, the Blues are a tough one. I love Robert Thomas. I think he's maybe the best pure passer in the National Hockey League. But you look at the lineup and it's old. Like it's old and boring. I think that's the worst combination.
There it is. They're boring.
Yeah, like I think that's the worst combination you can possibly have. And like you look at their lineup and it's just kind of guys who you kind of know. but they're not necessarily really good players. And their D too, right? Like again, Nick Leddy and Colton Parayko is their top pairing. And Parayko's got a good reputation in the league and he's experienced. He's a good player, but come on, man. Come on. And Justin Falk, man, I remember in Leaf World where everybody really wanted Justin Falk.
Oh yeah,
Everybody wanted Justin Falk. If you stop and watch this guy, he was Jake Gardner. Like
that's a
he had these
take.
moments of offensive brilliance, but oh my God, he'd be just a total disaster sometime. And then in the net, man, Binnington. How I said before, no assholes. I've never been a fan of Binnington. So I respect the guy for what he's done and how he made the NHL, and he's done better than he was supposed to. But I got to go under on the Blues.
Yeah, this is an easy under for me as well. Listen, they finished with 92 points last year, so like they were actually a pretty decent team, and like they have, like Jake Neighbors, he scored 27 goals last year.
Low key.
They got Dylan Holloway now, but I mean, I just look at their roster, and there's really not that much to get excited about. And if I think that Utah is going to take a leap, um, listen, if I think that Colorado, Dallas, and Nashville are just gonna like clean up in this division. So
Me too.
I think it's gonna be like almost like a stars and scrubs division where you have those top three. You have kind of Utah fighting with like Winnipeg for like the 4 seed, and then it's gonna kind of just be everyone else. So I'm going under on the Blues at 85.5. Last up in this division is Connor Bedard and the Blackhawks, 73.5 points. How do we feel about them?
I'll just go straight to the point. I'll go under on the Blackhawks. I mean, they made some additions. I don't know if they're any good. I mean, they brought over Brody and Bertuzzi. And is it just me or is it fucking weird that they named Foligno captain? It's just and I get it. Like the idea of like, okay, I'll have it for like 1 or 2 years and then Bedard will get it. But to me, they just didn't do enough. And I think but what I don't think's getting enough attention here with Chicago, and like they made those additions and they got some vets, and these guys should be better. They should make the team better. But we know as Leafs fans, you really have to take advantage when you have star players on their entry level deals. And like they haven't done anything really to really make us think that Chicago is going to be way better. I just don't like that team. So I'll go under on Chicago.
So they finished with 52 points last season. Do I think they've done enough to make like a 21 to 22 point turnaround? Hell no. Like Connor Bedard, I think is going to have a phenomenal season. Like he could spike big time. Like he could score like 40, 45 goals this year. I wouldn't be surprised. So I think, just him having like an unbelievable season is going to be enough to like improve this team by 10 to 15 points. But I don't think they're a serious team. They're still probably, I don't know, maybe they're not the worst team in the division. Like maybe the Blues end up being terrible, but I'm going under on the Blackhawks as well at 73.5.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Lepore, you know what's coming up next. It is the Pacific Division, a division that we are always very tough on because it's been very top heavy over the years, and some of the worst teams in the league are in this division. And it's the same case really this season, but we are starting things off with the Edmonton Oilers. They have the highest projected point total in the NHL. Their over-under is set at 107.5. That is 4 points higher than the next closest teams, who are the Avalanche and Stars at 103.5. Listen, I think the Oilers are the best team in the NHL. Like, I think they are easily the best team in the league. This is going to be their last season where they're going to have like the perfect, I shouldn't say their salary cap is perfect because they have Darnell Nurse and Jack Campbell, but obviously the Draisaitl extension is going to kick in. They're going to have to pay McDavid, who knows, 16 plus million potentially. This is their last chance, and they loaded up in the offseason. Victor Arvidsson, Jeff Skinner. This is a good team, man. I'm 100% smashing the over. Like, I think this team should win the President's Trophy.
Yeah, I'm always weary of picking a team to win the Stanley Cup that just seems like the obvious pick and the team that everyone's picking. So I do feel that way about the Oilers. Like people forget all it takes is a hot goalie, an injury, something crazy to happen, and you're out. But as far as the regular season goes, there's just too much there. There's too much depth. You mentioned what they added. I think they get that pretty easily. There may be the argument that they don't really care about the regular season based on what's lined up for them and what everyone's predicting them to do. But when you have that much firepower, it's kind of hard not to put up a huge point total in the regular season. Guys are going to get their cookies. So it is what it is there. But I'm with you, Bruno. I'll go over on the Oilers.
This team started the year last year 2-9-1 and still finished with 104 points.
Crazy.
So if they just aren't terrible to start the season and they just kind of remain consistent and kind of coast through the regular season, I mean, there's no reason this team shouldn't finish with like close to 110 points. So over on them. Okay, so Lepore, after Edmonton, like there is a massive drop off. Again, only when you're looking at these point total over unders. Next up is the Canucks in this division at 97.5. So the Oilers are the only team with a point total over 100. What are your thoughts on the Canucks? Like, are they going to take a step back after they had like an incredible PDO season last year?
I don't think they will, Bruno. I think, again, you look at the lineup and you see the talent. And to me, it's tough to not picture them in and around 100 points. So I'll be quick with this one. I'll just say over on the Canucks. I think that's a low point total for them.
So last year they finished with 109. I think this point total is kind of set perfectly because obviously like their PDO numbers were off the charts, shooting percentage, save percentage. The one big question mark right now is Thatcher Demko, who's dealing with like, it's almost like a mysterious injury.
Yeah, they're sending him like all over the world and stuff to try to like get different looks from different doctors. It's weird. And even
like
he was
really,
saying
I don't know, man. I'd be
is.
really concerned if I was a Canucks fan. And I know that they like, kind of figured it out in the playoffs without him. But I mean, Jesus, if you don't have Thatcher Demko, like that is a massive loss. Listen, I'm still going to give this team the benefit of the doubt. I'm still going to say they finish over 97, but like I'm going to say they finish with like 98 points this year. So I'll go over on the Canucks. So I think they take a big step back after their 109-point season. Next up, so this point total was actually taken off the board after Drew Doughty got injured in the preseason. It was a nasty ankle injury. It's the Kings. Their point total is set at 96.5. I'm actually very high on the Kings, but I don't love that Drew Doughty might be out for like 2 months because he's clearly their number one defenseman. Now, they actually have like some decent young defensemen. They have Brant Clark, who was like an absolute stud in the AHL, and he could like take over their power play potentially, but that's a big loss for that team. Although I love that they have Darcy Kemper. I love their depth. They're good defensively. Like Quentin Byfield can take another step. You know what? Fuck it. Even though Doughty's injured, I'm still going to say over 96.5. Again, this was actually taken off the board, but when it was last up, it was at 96.5.
I hate to disagree, Bruno, because I love the LA Kings, but I don't know if there's enough there to put them that high in the standings or where that would put them in the standings. And I think there's a lot of question marks. Like it could happen, but I think there's a lot of what ifs with the Kings. Like you mentioned, Brant Clark. How much of an impact is he going to have? Is Doughty going to be healthy? Are they going to get goaltending? You look at their depth. Like Trevor Moore is a great player. You know what, man? Byfield might take a huge leap this year. He took a semi leap last year. That's something. But I just don't think there's enough there. I think they're going to fight for a playoff spot. So I'll put them under that point total.
Okay. I mean, it's totally fair. Like the Doughty injury might be like the kiss of death if he's missing like 2 months. I know Drew Doughty is not considered like the same guy that he used to be, but he does a lot of shit for this team.
He means a lot to that team. Yeah.
So next up is Vegas. 96.5. I don't know. This team is like, I don't know what to think of this team. I actually don't love them, Lepore. Like just looking at their team on paper, you never want to bet against the Golden Knights, but like all it takes is another Mark Stone back injury. And like all of a sudden up front, like I know they have Thomas Hurdle now and they got Noah Hannafin for a whole season. So like their defense is good, but like, I don't know, man. Again, they kind of remind me of like Winnipeg. Like if they kind of take a step back defensively, and I'm not saying it could all fall apart, but I'm going to say they go slightly under. I'm going to say they go under 96 and a half points.
That's a tough one because again, there's a lot of what ifs with Vegas, and not a lot would be surprising. But I'm gonna go with you, Bruno. I'm gonna go under. Just because I don't think there's enough there. You mentioned the hurdle edition. William Karlsson still a sick player. Jack Eichel still Jack Eichel. Olafson's gonna get some points, and their D's pretty solid. But again, I just don't see that flash to get them to that next level in the standings. So I'm with you. I'll go under on the Golden Knights.
Next up, we have the Seattle Kraken. So they're kind of like stuck in the middle in this division. You have like those four teams that I mentioned. Then you have the Kraken at 88 and a half. Like they were really good in year one. Like I still can't even believe that they made the second round of the playoffs. And then last year they were garbage. And now I don't know what to expect from this team this season. Where do you stand on Seattle?
I think Seattle's boring. I think Seattle's low key a boring team. They got some nice flashy jerseys, so I think people kind of forget that. But you look at their lineup and there's some nice pieces, but I mean, Matty Beniers has a lot of upside. I mean, Bjorkstrand's a sick player, but really, really and truly, like who's really going to light it up for them? And then you look at their D. Their D's, I mean, they added Brandon Montour. That's something, but I'm not too confident in this Seattle team. Like I said, I just don't think there's enough there. And yeah, I got to go under on Seattle as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Kraken are good either. Even Brandon Montour, like I was cautioning Leaf fans who wanted to sign Brandon Montour. Like when he came back from his injury last season, like I mean, he was good, but he wasn't the Brandon Montour from 2 years ago. And to hand a 30-plus-year-old defenseman the contract that Seattle handed him, I don't know, that's kind of scary, man. I'm going to go under as well. Like I think Edmonton is just going to absolutely clean up in this division. Like this division sucks as far as I'm concerned. And again, not because like I think the Canucks, Kings, and Golden Knights stink. It's just so top heavy, and these the teams at the bottom are just garbage. And we'll get to them next. So I got the Kraken under 88 and a half. Then we have the Flames. I mean, are the Flames just like, I mean, they're in a rough spot, man. 78 and a half points.
78 and a half. That's low. But even then I got to go under. I feel like there's no positive energy coming from the Flames. I think even the biggest Flames fans in the world are really afraid of this season, and even going further have this thought of like we may get even worse because they may go in a full blow up mode. So I got to go under on that total. I think Calgary might be one of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah, Calgary's garbage. I'm a huge fan of Nazem Kadri. I like even like Igor Sharangovich, Kuzmenko. Like their first line should be solid, but I mean, God, they're paying Jonathan Huberdeau $10 million a year to be like just a third liner. I mean, it's embarrassing, honestly. You just go through their roster. There's nothing that gets me excited about this team. They're definitely going under 78 and a half. And I get it that 78 and a half is like a low point total, but I just think this team stinks. And then we have next up a team that once again is expected to be one of the worst in the league. It's the Anaheim Ducks. Their point total is set at 70 and a half. And it just seems like no matter how many young players they acquire in the draft, like year after year, they're just bad. Are they going to be brutal again?
I really like Mintnyakov. I think he could be like a legit number one defenseman in this league. And I think that's going to be a big boost for them. I think Mason McTavish might be one of the most underrated players in the league. I love what he brings. Zegras is Zegras and just annoying. And who knows even if he's going to be there. But I'm going to have some fun. I'm going to say Anaheim surprises people, and I'll go over on that one.
Yeah, you know what, Lepore? Like, I think this team still sucks, but I don't think they suck quite enough that it's going to go over 70 and a half. Like you mentioned, Mityukov and Cutter Gauthier as well.
Mm.
Leo Carlson, like he could take a leap. And again, I'm not saying this team's going to make the playoffs and do damage, but I think they're going to be a little bit better than they were last. I mean, they got to be not just a little bit, they got to be much better. So last year they had 59 points. Can they have an 11-point turnaround? Fuck it. I think so. I'm going to say they finish with like 72 points. So I'm going over on the Ducks as well. We have reached the end here, Lepore. The last team. They are projected once again to finish with the worst record in the league. It's the San Jose Sharks, 63.5 points. Over or under?
You know what, man? The Sharks are kind of hard to do because I don't really know what they have. But that's never a good sign. Celebrini is going to be something. I mean, but again, question marks being a rookie. They have Toffoli, right? So, I mean, there's maybe some scoring there. Barclay Goodrow. I'm trying to think like who else is in that lineup, but
Fabian Zetterlund, William Eklund, Mikhail Granlund, a lot of Lunds.
Yeah, there's some good there's some good hockey names there. I just don't know if there's a lot of good hockey players. I think they'll probably be the worst team in the league again, and I think they're happy to be the worst team in the league. Get Celebrini in the future some help. So I'll go under on San Jose.
There's one underrated thing about this team, and that is that they now have Yaroslav Askarov, like the insane goalie prospect who wanted to get the hell out of Nashville.
Yes.
Now, apparently, so he's starting the year from what I've read in the AHL. I'm sure he's going to get some games in the NHL. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe he's going to be like outstanding, but this team still stinks. I don't know if they're going to finish dead last in the league. I mean, they probably will. I'm going to go under as well, under 63.5. Like, keep in mind, this team finished with 47 points last year, and they had a minus 150 goal differential. Minus 150. God. Yeah, so I'm going under. Anyway, that's it, Lepore. Like, any final thoughts from you before we close this thing out?
The long one, Bruno. Look, it's getting dark out. My room got dark since the start of this show. As people can see, I'm still going through a move and have a new setup, and I promise it will improve. But always fun doing this show, Bruno. And like I said, let's make a point. Even if it's after the playoffs in the summer when we got nothing to talk about, let's go back and see how we did with our predictions.
No, I agree. We definitely have to revisit this. We should have done that for this episode, revisited how we did last season, but we were just too lazy to do that, to be honest with you. So we'll make a point to do that next season to see how all of these picks turn out. Let us know your thoughts in the comments about all the predictions we made for all 32 teams. That is going to do it for episode 154 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. Whether you're a first-time listener or a long-time listener, if you really enjoyed this episode, we would appreciate it so much if you give us a 5-star rating and review on either Apple or Spotify. And if you're watching us on YouTube and you love this video, then please go ahead and smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. It would help us immensely. Like I said, leave your comments down below on how you think the Leafs are going to do, how the Oilers are going to do, how you think any of these teams are going to do. Let us know who your favorite team is, and if you think they're going to go over or under their projected point total. We would love to have the conversation going in the comment section for this one. But that's it. The regular season is almost here, and we can't wait to watch the Leafs win the division and, of course, win the Stanley Cup. It's a slam dunk, and yeah, it all starts very, very soon. So for Michael Lepore, I'm Anthony Bruno. Enjoy the rest of the preseason if you're even paying attention to it, and we will be back very, very soon.
Thanks, everyone.